when you were with Strapping Young Lads, and also with the Devin Townsend band, you toured a lot. But then you got kind of tired of this, and you had a long break where you didn't tour and you didn't know if you'd come back. But now you have announced that you may go touring again if you find the right musicians.
When I initially made that statement, it was at the end of the time that I was spending with Strapping Young Lad, and I did that Ziltoid record as kind of a transition. During that time, I was just stopping smoking marijuana, and I don't think I realized until I completely quit how much the paranoia that I was experiencing in terms of performing live and doing interviews was connected to me smoking marijuana and drinking. I think that for some people it's a pastime, but I think there's other people who are perhaps predisposed to schizophrenia or mental illness of some sort. And then by smoking marijuana, it basically propels you in that direction that not only fills you with this kind of strange paranoia, but also makes you participate in this reality that, you know, colors everything you do. And as soon as I quit it and spent, you know, a year and a half away from it, I started thinking, this chaos is going away, you know?
It's about clarity.
Yeah. And so when all of a sudden I come here, this is the first promo tour I've done in years, right? And I used to dread promo tours. I used to think to myself, oh my God, I have to be asked questions. And again, you know, analyzing it, it's like, well, why are you afraid to answer those questions? And I'm thinking because at the time, what I was writing about, what I was singing about, and what I was performing, I don't even think I was aware of what my motivations were at that time. So when you're being, questioned about it, the answers that come into your head, it's like a lot of times you just like, you don't feel comfortable that you want to face that in a lot of ways. That maybe, you know, the motivation is different. But I also found that by taking away that paranoia, a lot of the shadows were, you know, more fearful or fearsome than the actual things that were casting them, right?
So would an album like City have been a result of, what would you explain, you know, the paranoia and all that came about from?
I would think to a certain extent, but that was the very beginning of it, right? Yeah. So there was still an element of control that it was like being presented with. Yeah. But again, it's like the idea of regretting any of that is absurd as well, right? Like, I mean, it's like you do what you do, and I'm very proud of Strapping Young Lad, and specifically how it has allowed me to kind of reflect on it and move by, right? Because I think, you know, I have a very stubborn person. If somebody told me that this would be the direct result of it, I would have still done it. Because I think what needs to happen for me is like, you know, I need to be embarrassed to be able to take it personally, right? Yeah, I think, you know, it's like the whole thing with like Strapping Young Lad. It was like, I'm very, very proud of it. But I think what the intention was in the beginning became very different. Like in the beginning, Strapping Young Lad was about saying, you know, like, enough of this, and having the strength in myself to be able to look at it with like still a clear perspective. And by the end, the irony of the whole band is that it ended up that I was terrified. You know, and in the beginning, what made Strapping Young Lad so strong was the strength. You know, and so by the end I was like going, you know, so if the only way I can reconnect with that is by doing drugs, then basically it's gotten the best of me. And a lot of the reasons why I felt like I needed drugs to do it again is because the things that made City so important to me, I resolved as a result of doing City. So when I came back to it, I was just like, well, I'm over that. But it's popular, so sure, let's just smoke a bunch of weed and drink a bunch of booze and sure, fuck the world. You know what I mean? But I was still finding an angle to like project it as, but the problem is again, like what Strapping Young Lad, why that was so good for me when I was younger was because it was based in having strength of your own self, right? And so when all of a sudden that went to like Alien, where all of a sudden it was paranoia, I didn't even realize at the time, it's like you're smoking so much marijuana, you know? And it's like, I'm not the personality type that is good for. And so coming away from it, to make a long story even longer, the reason why now, of course I tour, of course I do interviews, because if I understand my motivation for doing something, if I can explain it, then yeah, and of course, you know, that's the thing with getting up on stage. If it's going to be something that affects your audience, it has to be coming from your heart. And if you're unsure about it, then everybody is going to know that on some level you're faking it, even if you don't know that. So now, sure. What I choose to play, though, who knows? It's still too early.
I mean, it would take a lot to cover the whole discography, you know, as in
yeah, but
sets.
There's, it's a big discography, and I certainly, don't remember every song, So I think that it's like, these next 4 records, I think, will be the first thing that I tour, because what I'm trying to do is add a sense of clarity to the past catalog by presenting one of each record that has a style that's similar to like a certain part of the back catalog, right? Like there's going to be a very, very complicated record that's similar to Alien and Infinity, but without letting it get the best of me. So the original intention is clarified. There's a much more commercial, kind of heavy sounding record that's more like the Devin Townsend band, that will perhaps add clarity to that. Because even the Devin Townsend band was based on this real sense of like me feeling it was important to like share these issues with the audience, right? And I mean, the fact that even I continue to do that now is again because it really is important for me before I move on to clarify why I did what I did, right? Not excuse it, not, feel bad for it, but just say, okay, well, actually, in hindsight, this is what I meant. Here's 4 records, each one of them summarize a certain element, then we can basically close the door on that, and then whatever I choose to do next, who knows,
You always expressed your feelings through your music, and you have done what you wanted, especially when you started up your own record company. But you had a project called IR8 with Metallica's Jason Newsted. But Metallica didn't really like him playing outside the band and prevented him from this. What did you think then? Isn't any musician allowed to do whatever his or her creativity wants him or her to?
Apparently not. I mean, yeah, that whole IR8 thing, I mean, I was just a weekend with some friends, right? And I think you're right. I think Jason did get a lot of shit for that, right? But I think it was a point for him more, And I can understand that point, absolutely, right? But in terms of should musicians be able to, I think that's a hard question to answer because each situation is different, But life, as far as I can tell, seems to make sense. What they say, hindsight is 20/20, right? And where Metallica are currently, I think probably has a lot to do with the fact that Jason Newsted quit for that reason, right? It looks like it definitely affected their singer, and maybe in the long run it affected the band in a positive way to lose a member based on that kind of control thing.